Welcome to the show. I'm Doug Johnson, your host, and this is the Business of Life Strategies for Success. During each show, we meet with a local personality who is willing to share their strategies for success with us. But first, we find out a little bit about themselves and what they've been doing with their lives. Today's guest is a well-known Twinsburger, shall we say, who now lives in Reminderville and is an attorney in Hudson. His name is Nick Cardinal, and many of you probably know him and his family. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Pretty excited about it because a young, upcoming attorney who can give all of us older folks some help with what we need as we age, hopefully in place.
Yes.
So, anyway, Nick, you were recently elected to something called super lawyers, and that's a designation of top practicing attorneys selected through a very extensive process.
Yes, it is.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's a peer review process.
Okay.
It's voted on by other lawyers within the state and within the region, and they take the top 5% of those and they call them super lawyers, and they're by age ranges. So it's been 3 or 4 years now that I've been selected to that, and it's been a nice organization to network with other attorneys as well.
Great, and quite an honor, obviously.
Yeah, very much, and thanks for having me, Doug.
You bet, you bet. So Nick, why an attorney? What made you decide to become an attorney?
Oh gosh, well, I really just wanted to hear all the attorney jokes for the rest of my life. So I thought if I could pick a career where people make bad jokes about me, it'd always break the ice in a room. No, so actually, I would say since high school, it was on the back burner. My parents pushed me pretty hard to want to go to college and graduate school. I always got pretty good grades in high school, and there's something about the aura of a professional that I really took a liking to at a young age. I respected the idea and the thoughts of being a professional, not necessarily a career where I could kind of make a name for myself. So I remember doing a research project about it at Twinsburg High School. It was career day, and they make you, it was a project, you pick the career that you maybe would want to do, and you did a huge research project on it, and found out that's when I first learned how long I'd have to go to school for, which was a bit discouraging, but I guess when you're already in school, you try to just put that towards the back burner. I also learned that attorneys have high incidences of drug and alcohol abuse, which I found to...
So that was an attraction or a...
Well, it kind of scared me, and then I found out that I don't think it's any more related than any other industry. I mean, everybody's job can be stressful, so it didn't discourage me. And, I just went to undergrad and kind of saw where it came. So I went to Twinsburg High School, was a graduate in 2002, grew up in Reminderville and Aurora Shores, so I've been there my whole life. And after high school, I applied to Miami University, was accepted there into their School of Business Administration, and really I was pretty set on just going into the business world, maybe going into finance or banking. And when it was time for graduation, the jobs I was seeing were all sales. They were all sales jobs. And I thought, well, there's got to be something else. So I ended up taking the LSAT exam at the last possible second to get in for the following semester. Ended up scoring good enough, got into the University of Akron on a full ride tuition scholarship, and kind of never looked back.
Great.
So, yeah.
So now you talked a little bit about business interest. Really, you're your own person. You are not part of a large attorney group. You have your own law business.
That is correct. And I decided with my undergraduate degree, even though when I started in undergrad, being an attorney wasn't the definite goal. I knew I wanted to have a degree that would be useful if I decided not to go to law school, if I decided that I didn't want to actively practice. So business, I felt, was the most all-around useful degree. I think I would say that same thing to any young person looking at an undergraduate education. You really can't go wrong in the business school, regardless of your major, if you wanted to do marketing or entrepreneurship. And certainly having that degree in finance has helped me know how to run a business. I came from a family of small business owners. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, owned a body shop and a car dealership that my mother worked at her whole life. From the year she was 18, he owned a bar. He owned multiple businesses. And watching that small business grow and employ multiple generations of my family really kind of turned me on to the idea of one day having my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And it now happens to be a law firm.
Great. You mentioned that you're a homegrown boy, lived in the area all your life. There's something in Ohio called a brain drain. And many students after high school or after college leave Ohio for one reason or another, and obviously called the Ohio brain drain. What would you say if you were to counsel any of those students about living in Ohio and staying in the state?
Well, I would give them 3 words that may tempt them to stay here: cost of living. Mm-hmm. We have one of the lowest cost of livings in the country comparative to what you get. For me, the choice was a definite choice. I'm an only child, and I'm really close with both my parents, so it would have been hard for me to pick up and move across the country because I knew that they would probably follow me, or one of them would, right? And I would say that you have to take the chances life gives you. And I've known, now being 20 plus years out of high school, many people that have actually moved away and came back. Mm-hmm. I think I've seen a lot of that lately. Basically, they either go away to college or post-degree, take a job, whether it's outside of Ohio, outside of Cleveland, or even further away. And I found that a lot of people, once they start to have young children, go back to where the grandparents are, if the grandparents are still here. So for me, I would tell a young person, you have to pick a career that you like, and if you're fortunate enough to have a career in Ohio, there's great things to enjoy here. We have fantastic, sports. Our Metro Park system in Cleveland and Summit County is one of the best in the country. We have the National Park here. A lot of things we don't have, like hurricanes, right, earthquakes.
Yep.
So it's, for me, it was nice. My family's here. I enjoy it. And it's a great place to call home. I visited many places that I don't know if I can necessarily live at. Love to go visit California. Couldn't live there. Love Florida. Couldn't live there. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here if you want it. A lot of companies, especially Columbus, is really growing when you talk about companies and IBM's coming in there, building their big chip manufacturer. You're going to see a lot of people moving there, and it's what you make of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So. Nick, you're quite an outdoorsman. How does that figure in with your family and with your business?
Well, I will say that having my own practice affords me some flexibility with my scheduling and with how I choose to spend my time. My wife and I do like to spend a lot of time outdoors, whether it be snowboarding in the winter, or we like to do water sports and boating in the summer. So we try to get out as much as we can. Probably the only negative thing about northeastern Ohio is we don't get a lot of sun. So when we do, we like to enjoy it. And I think it's important, whatever career you choose, to have a work-life balance. That's a big talk these days.
Right.
When you're looking at jobs, that's a question people will ask their interviewers. They'll say, what's the work-life balance here? Well, when you're in business for yourself, you're never really off the clock, right? You are constantly at the behest of your clients, but you have to set boundaries, and that's what I try to do. If somebody calls me at Sunday at 3 p.m., don't expect me to answer the call. If you leave a message and it's an emergency, I'll do my best, but I think I try to set those expectations with my clients, because I do like to, I have to set time aside for myself and my family, right, and or our hobbies. So we're able to do that and still run a successful practice.
Great. Nick, I have a little bit of a conundrum in my little old brain. You're an attorney, and there is the stereotype of an attorney.
Sure.
And I know you drive a honking big white truck, and that just does not mesh.
Sure.
How can you explain that?
Well, because my muscle car doesn't go far in the snow, so I have to have the truck for winter purposes. Everybody has their hobbies. Cars are one of mine. I've always liked American cars and trucks. I always wanted a big Chevy truck when I got older. One day, if I have multiple children, that might turn into a Suburban or a Tahoe. But right now, we like to have the truck. Tool around supports our hobbies. We like to throw the snowboards in the back or the wakeboards in the back, and really use all four seasons like we can here. And I also was just never a BMW or an Audi kind of guy. Those there's plenty of them out there. They're great vehicles for other people, but I'm an American car guy.
You just can't pull your boat with them either.
Oh, of course. Yeah, you can't. Well, much harder to pull a boat with a 3 Series than
right.
with a Silverado, so that's for sure.
Yep. What kind of muscle car?
Camaro
Okay.
SS, yeah. So that and then one of the motivators I had when I was a young kid, my dad had a 73 Corvette, and he would take me for rides in it every weekend. We'd go up to Lake Erie, and he told me, he said, Nick, you go to college and graduate, that car's yours. Okay, Dad. Well, lo and behold, it's graduation week down in Oxford, Ohio, and my dad calls me. He's all excited, coming down for the graduation ceremony, and I said, Dad, you better bring those keys with you. He goes, why? I'm not bringing the car. I said, bring the keys. And I still have the car. I drove it to both of my high school proms, my wife's prom. We have it in our wedding, and one day my kid will have the car. So,
Super.
Yeah, it's 50 years this year, so it's wild.
Right.
It's wild. So we try to break stereotypes at Cardinal Law. I hear a lot of them. The biggest stereotype I try to break when it comes to attorneys is it's amazing how many people call me and say, well, my attorney never returns my calls. And that I don't understand, because if you don't have an attorney-client relationship with somebody and you don't return their calls, well, maybe you're not interested in their case and you're too busy. They'll go with the next guy in the phone book, or Google search, I should say. But I think it's very important, once you have that attorney-client relationship with somebody, that if they call you, whether or not it's something you can help them with, you should at least call them back in a reasonable amount of time and say yes, or I'm too busy, or this is outside my area. And I found over the past 6 years of my own practice that just by simply doing that, people are happy with me, and they know, oh, okay, he doesn't handle divorce at his office, but here's some people that maybe can help you. Thank you for calling me back. And I really try to break that stereotype of being unavailable to my clients. And I think really you have to be honest and set expectations and say, here's what we're going to do. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's your level of involvement to help me get to the finish line. And then I feel that if I do that with people during the initial consults, it's a very smooth relationship. So that's one of the other trends I try to get out in front of, is being there for my clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, and being one of your clients, I can attest to the fact that that's exactly what happened and how smoothly things go. Nick, if you wouldn't mind giving our audience perhaps the answer to some questions that I hear a lot.
Sure.
That friends of mine are going through issues and aging, and aging seems to be a big thing these days.
Gracefully, by the way.
Thank you. So the question is, what is the difference between a will and a trust? And what are the pros and cons of each?
Sure. So the whole goal when clients come into my office for estate planning, which is a large part of my practice, is to, number one, figure out what their intentions are, how they want to accomplish their goals, and the most efficient way to accomplish them. And efficiency can be measured in many different ways: cost, time, and oftentimes it's a choice between how much money and time you want to spend right now setting up your estate versus how much is going to be spent upon your passing by your next of kin and or the probate court. So a will is a document that you as a testator sign. Your last will and testament describes how the nature and bounty of your estate, quoting a law school book, and how you want it to be disposed of and to whom. And who's going to be in charge of doing that. That's the executor. Simply a will be probated through the probate court, and there will be a judge that will hear the case, that will appoint your executor, and your executor will take that process through the court system through its finality, which is typically your final bequests. That process, setting up a will, is less costly than setting up a trust, but the costs on administrating a will are exponentially higher than a trust. Ultimately, though, by having a will, your estate is going to get to where you want it to go. Why have one? People ask me this all the time. Well, it all depends on your family situation, but certainly you've gone your life, whether at the stage you're at now or in your younger years, that you want to choose who's in charge of your estate, and you want to make sure that certain people get what's coming to them. And there may be people that under Ohio law would inherit if you didn't have a will. If you have siblings, and some of them you don't like, if you don't have a will, they could take. Same thing with children. Now, a trust basically takes whatever you want as far as your estate in terms of administration, takes that out of the court's hands. Okay, it's done through a trustee, and it's essentially the same process without court oversight. And when you hear the term court oversight, think money and time, because no court system is efficient. Ask anybody if they've been involved in them, specifically not probate court, okay? And also, in probate court, who's doing the work? Well, there's an attorney at minimum. There are court costs, and those fees can be quite expensive. People don't realize. Now, people say to me, well, I'll be gone. What do I care? Mm-hmm. Well, it depends how much you want to go to your kids or to whoever your beneficiaries are, because ultimately the money to pay for that administration comes out of the net estate. Whereas in a trust, you set up a trust document now. Most couples are doing what's known as a living trust, a revocable trust, where they're the trustees of their trust during their lifetime. Then they choose who they want to be successor trustees. Usually one person is a successor trustee. Upon the death of the trustor, that trustee comes in, opens up a trust account. Basically all the monies flow into that trust account and or real estate. And then that trustee disperses those funds per the trust document. Trusts are a little more costly to set up, but have almost very negligible administration costs. There's no court costs. Most of the costs you're spending are stuff you'd spend anyways with an accountant and or financial advisor. So trusts afford a lot more flexibility. It's almost you set it up now and it runs on autopilot through your death. And I see a lot more of that specifically in younger couples that have young children. And once I explain to them, well, if you die and your kids are under the age of 18, that money's held in through probate court until they turn 18. And every year, your executor's filing something with the court, and court costs and attorney fees are going on for however many years. And most people don't want their kids to get their money at 18. They want it to be 25 or 28 Well, now your court case is going on that much longer. So most of the time when people hear that and I explain to them how simple the trust really is, I see a lot more young couples going with trusts. So, and I'm happy to discuss that with anybody in my office.
Interesting. Is there a minimum amount that triggers probate, or is it just anything that's left through a will has to go through probate?
Well, that's great. That's a great question. So there's many ways to avoid probate, and most everything you own, you can avoid probate with. Okay, you could put payable on death designations on your bank accounts; those stay out of probate. You can even do that with the deed to your house. But as far as the minimum amount, it doesn't have anything to do with the amount of an asset. It's what it's titled to. Okay, so if your bank account's still in your name, you don't have a payable on death beneficiary. If you pass away, your account is payable to your estate. Well, now we have to open up an estate. Same thing with life insurance policies and real estate. The intricacies become if you don't want your beneficiaries to get the assets immediately upon death because they're young children, right? Or we need to divide those assets. That's where the probate and or trust question comes in. So typically, I don't have people come into my office and say they need to have this much money to set up a trust because it's really, I've had to probate $5,000 vehicles and it's a royal pain. It's a pain because a dead person can't sign a car title. If they had had a trust, it would have been very simple. So every situation's different, and that's what I really enjoy about estate planning is that every family or every person is like a puzzle. And we're trying to figure out how to win the game of life, right, for them, and how to distribute their monopoly money, right? And how can we do it with causing the least amount of pain to their family members who are already grieving?
Mm-hmm. Nick, wow, thank you. That explains a lot to me and hopefully to our guests who are watching today. So you have a successful law practice. Let's talk about your strategies for success.
Sure.
What would you say those are?
Well, number one, and this is much easier said than done, but I think you really should try to find a career that you love or like a lot. Because if you like what you do, you're never really going to work. Mm-hmm. And it's easier said than done. People will say that. Certainly, I've been an attorney for 13 years. Did I always love what I did? No. But I was able to focus in on what I liked, and helping people was a big part of that. And I get a lot of personal satisfaction, and it really doesn't feel like work. So I would tell people, whatever career you go into, it's not always about the money. Find what you like.
I think what you just said is so important. You know, I think many people are concerned about the money.
Sure.
And, oh my gosh, we need to choose a career because I can make lots of money.
Right.
And I think today's younger generation are moving away from that and going towards the work-life balance that you
Sure.
talked about before. And I just think that's so important for a happy life.
Absolutely. Putting a price, it's hard. You can't put a price on happiness, and you can't put a price on stress or lack thereof. And whenever your dollar's driven in your salary expectations, your workplace expectations are going to be that much higher. And at the end of the day, if you're at work all the time and you hate it, doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank.
Right. What's the point?
So that's helped me. I mean, my practice has grown tremendously the more I enjoy it and the more I help people. So I'm proof. Let's see, what was my second one? We wrote these down.
Honesty and integrity.
Oh, yeah. Honesty and integrity in everything that you do.
Right.
You know, my dad told me, your word's your bond. So I think that in business and in life, set your expectations, over-deliver, and stay with your word, and people will follow you.
There is a nonprofit, based in Cleveland, called Because I Said I Would.
Oh.
And the founder started this nonprofit because of something he told his dad upon his dad's deathbed. And one of the things they do is hand out little sticky pads that say, because I said I would. And if you make a promise and write it on that pad and put it someplace, you'll do it.
Yeah,
And talking about your word is your bond,
sure.
because I said I would, and it's a great
I'll have to look into that.
nonprofit, very interesting.
Yeah.
And so my understanding is that they have just purchased property to put a camp on
Oh, wow.
to encourage this kind of thing.
Yeah.
The founder now goes all over the country speaking. So
Wow.
really a pretty neat thing. The third thing that you talked about, Nick, was living within your means.
Yes.
What about that?
Well, and it sounds like dry advice, and I think that in today's culture, so many people are worried about keeping up with the Joneses and driving, big trucks or having a bigger house. And then they're working all the time and they're stressed out to pay for these things that, I found that whether it's your life, setting your budget, living within it, or even in your business, not over-promising and overextending yourself. And if you live within what you can do, you'll be able to do more. And if my grandma grew up in the Depression, right? She didn't have much. The newer generations, they don't have that to lean on. And I think that it's important for people to keep in mind, if you live within your means, you're probably going to live a very happy life and you won't be stressed and you'll be able to do more with yourself.
Can you sum that all up, Nick? Just the three things that you just said real quickly.
Sure. So do what you love for a living. You'll never work a day in your life. Be honest in what you do, whether it's business or life, and people will flock to you. And if you want to keep doing it for a long time, live within your means.
Nick, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show today, and wishing you lots of luck in the future. And I think today's program has hopefully helped some of our viewers with questions that they might have had.
I hope so.
So again, Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
And thank you for your continued lawyership and friendship.
You are very welcome, and I'll be right around the corner in Hudson if you ever need me.
Super. Thanks,
Doug.
Nick.
You're welcome.